What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we're going to be comparing the new Google Pixel 4a to the Samsung Galaxy A51. This was easily the most requested comparison that you guys wanted me to do. The A51 has been one of the best-selling phones worldwide in 2020 so far, and the Pixel 4a, if you didn't know, has also quickly become a top-selling phone, just after a couple of days of going on sale. So these are two obviously super popular phones in the sort of budget and mid-range space, and they both do offer a lot, but they're very different devices, obviously. So in this video, we're going to go over everything that's different, all the things that are the same, and everything else in between, so that hopefully you can decide if either of these phones is right for you. First off, let's talk about the price, since that's already the first big difference. With the Pixel 4a, it's pretty simple. This phone retails for $349 unlocked, and there's one color option and one configuration option. So what you see is what you get. With the A51, it's not quite as simple, but I'll try and sum it up the best I can. This phone technically is listed for like $399 on Samsung's website, but nobody should be paying that price. It's been out for a while, and because of that, you can pick up an unlocked A51 on places like Amazon for closer to $300, even as low as $280. And both in the US and around the world, this phone does have some carrier deals and things like that too. There are also configuration options you can choose from with the A51, which I'll go over when we get to performance, but overall price is kind of close. The A51 is a little cheaper depending on where you get it from, but I think we're within $25 to $50 on either side with these two phones. And if you guys are interested in doing some comparison shopping of your own, or maybe you want to pick up one of these phones for yourself, I'll have some links down below to where you can get these devices at their cheapest current prices. So check down there so you don't miss out on any good deals. Physically, we're obviously dealing with two very different setups here with these phones, and they're going to appeal to two different groups of people. With the Pixel 4a, this phone is a 5.8-inch device. It's fairly small by 2020 standards, but certainly has its advantages with comfortability and one-handed use. The A51, on the other hand, is a fairly large 6.5-inch phone, and with that, you're getting a lot of screen real estate for your money. Side by side, you can really tell the difference. The biggest thing is just in sheer height, but the A51 is also a little bit wider as well. So overall in the hand, it's going to be quite the device to manage. It's not for everyone, but for folks who like that big screen, you certainly do get that with the A51, and you fortunately don't have to pay flagship prices. With the Pixel 4a, this phone is very comfortable. It's easy to tap and touch every side and every corner with just your thumb. And while phones continue to get bigger and bigger, the Pixel 4a fills the need for folks who just want something smaller and more comfortable. With this, it's really just going to be a matter of personal preference. Having a big screen is great and all, but at the same time, big screen phones seem to be all that's out right now. So it is the 4a that's going to be an option for people who just need something smaller. When it comes to their housing and build quality, both of these phones are plastic, though how they look is obviously pretty different. The simple matte black housing on the 4a isn't trying to trick you into thinking it's anything else. It's plastic, feels like plastic, but a high quality sort of soft touch material that's thick enough to not feel cheap. With the A51, Samsung offers this shiny rainbow back and polished chrome accents all around that's supposed to sort of mimic glass and metal, but like I said, it too is plastic, and you can feel that in the hand. Neither phone has any water resistance, and neither phone offers wireless charging. And that's just the standard for phones in this price range with this kind of a build. All in all, the only thing that's different here is just the look, and again, that might also just be a matter of personal preference. Taking a look around at everything else, on the left side, you've got your SIM card trays for both phones, but the A51's also doubles as expandable storage, which the Pixel 4a does not offer, so keep that in mind. On the right side, both phones have the volume and power buttons, just placed and designed a little differently. Up top is where you'll find the headphone jack on the Pixel 4a, and down below, the A51 has its headphone jack, as well as a USB-C port and speaker for both phones. Now, one other important difference here actually is with that speaker setup. The Pixel 4a has dual stereo speakers with the one down below and a second one in the earpiece, while the A51 has just the one single downward facing speaker. And in my opinion, the Pixel 4a sounds quite a bit better overall. Here's an audio sample so you can get an idea. Around back, both phones have very different camera setups, which I will of course go over, but below that on the Pixel 4a, you've got a physical fingerprint sensor. This works really well, it's placed in the right spot, and it's pretty fast too, which is good. This is the only unlocking method for this phone though. The A51 of course has its fingerprint sensor underneath the front display, which you guys know for me has never really been that great. It's a little slower and kind of inconsistent at times. Luckily, the A51 also has Face Unlock, something the Pixel does not offer, and that's a bit faster for me to get into the phone and something I prefer. When it comes to the actual displays themselves, there are some differences here beyond just the size. First off, both phones have a pretty similar front setup, corner-to-corner screens with a great screen-to-body ratio and minimal bezels all the way around. The 4a has a corner camera cutout, obviously, while the A51 has a center hole punch camera, and it is quite a bit smaller too, but there's really no functional differences here. Across the bottom and really all the way around, the A51 has a bit slimmer bezels, I think, but all in all, both phones offer minimal borders, no hideous chin, no notch either, and just a nice modern looking design. The Pixel 4a's display is a 5.8-inch OLED screen with a resolution of 2340 by 1080 and a pixel density of around 443 pixels per inch. The much larger A51 has a 6.5-inch Super AMOLED screen with a similar 1080 by 2400 resolution at around 405 pixels per inch. Now, to be totally honest, I kind of thought for sure that the A51 would maybe be the noticeably better display with color or brightness in a side-by-side test, but I can hardly tell a difference here. The only advantage the A51 might have is with darker colors and blacks. They seem to be a little more rich, but in general, the viewing experience is super similar with the detail, the brightness, and most of the color. Both these phones have fantastic displays for the money, really great viewing experiences, and I'd argue that's probably one of the selling points for both of these phones. No, you don't get any fancy high refresh rate or crazy resolution with either device. Everything is very simple here, but that's just what you can sort of expect for this price. And at this $300 to $350 range, I have no complaints with either phone. And like I said already, I also appreciate the minimal distractions, tons of screen real estate, very little borders. You might have to decide how big of a screen you want, but you just can't go wrong with either phone. Okay, so let's jump into the specs and performance, since I know that's what most people want to see. First off, in regards to the internals, the Pixel 4a has the Snapdragon 730G processor paired with the Adreno 618 GPU, 6GB of RAM, and 128GB of UFS 2.1 storage with no SD card expansion. The A51 ships with Samsung's own Exynos 9611 processor and Mali G72 GPU, and you have some options here. 64 or 128GB of storage with 4GB of RAM, 128GB of storage with 6GB of RAM, and even a 128GB model with 8GB of RAM. For the sake of simplicity, my A51 is the base model with just 4GB of RAM, and I suspect that's what most people will buy simply because it is the phone that's most widely available. And I think what people are more curious about besides the RAM is the processor performance. So here are the Antutu scores for these phones, and if there was any worry about Google's choice to go with the year-and-a-half-old 730G processor, I think you can rest easy because this phone performs really well. In just launching everyday apps, the Pixel 4a is going to load things a tiny bit quicker. It's not always the case, but it's pretty frequently, and I think you can sort of see that. It's not a huge difference, but it's there. Now, as these phones get pushed harder and harder with more apps and more things loaded, the more RAM on the Pixel 4a will help keep it moving along and keep things loaded up. The A51 will just slow down and falter sooner, but besides all of that, just the OS optimization in general, just the user experience itself, it feels better on the Pixel 4a. They both run Android 10 obviously, but with Samsung's One UI 2, I don't think it's any match for the experience on the Pixel, and this is what fans of the Google Pixel device like the most: the seamless, simple, well-optimized software experience. Going beyond that, when we move into something like gaming, both these phones will be fine for just about everything you want them to do. But again, I think you actually do get a little better performance in general with the Pixel 4a. If I had to choose a phone based solely on performance, it would be the Pixel in this case. Even if that chipset is a little older, it's just the better optimized phone from start to finish, but particularly with the UI. Yes, the extra RAM does have a bit to do with it. I unfortunately don't have an A51 with 6 or 8 gigs to test. If you want to go that route, that's fine, but we know Exynos chipsets can be a little questionable at times. So I think I'd still rather have the Snapdragon 730G anyway, to be totally honest. When it comes to battery life and capacity, once again, these phones do things sort of differently. The smaller Pixel 4a packs a 3140 milliamp capacity battery inside, while the A51 has a slightly larger 4000 milliamp battery. But that larger size doesn't always mean longer life. With a bit bigger display on the A51, that's going to be a factor. And once again, I think the Pixel 4a is just better optimized to last throughout the day. I've found the 4a to have a little extra juice left compared to the A51, with probably 45 minutes or so more of screen on time. So for overall battery life, I think I'm going to go with the Pixel once again. Finally, let's go over what all is going on with these cameras, because these phones have very different approaches here too. With the Pixel 4a, we continue with Google's trend of making the most out of just one single lens. You get a 12.2 megapixel main lens around back, along with an 8 megapixel selfie camera up front. On the A51, you get a crazy quad lens setup, a 48 megapixel main lens, a 12 megapixel ultra wide lens, 5 megapixel macro lens, and 5 megapixel depth sensor. And up front, there's also a 32 megapixel selfie camera. Now, here's the thing. Specs aren't everything, and if you just want a straight answer, the Pixel is far and away the better picture and video taker, and honestly, it's not even close. Yes, the A51 has more shooting options and features like wide angle, which is useful, but the macro lens is just not important, and the depth sensor is something we know the Pixel 4a has never really had to rely on. Both phones can shoot 4K video, both have low light shooting modes, though the Pixel 4a's again is going to be a lot better. And when it comes to just straight side-by-side picture samples, the 4a is simply miles ahead of the A51. And honestly, that just shouldn't come as a surprise at this point. This is what Google is known for. The Pixel 4a will always outshoot anything in its price range and even some phones above it. So if pictures are even the slightest bit of a concern for you, the 4a is the clear choice. So here are my final thoughts. A few months ago, the A51 was one of the easiest choices to make when it came to a budget or mid-range phone. It offered a lot for the money, and it still does, honestly. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But with the 4a in the picture now, that's the phone I'd choose for almost everything. It is likely a little pricier than the A51, but with the added value you can get with performance and camera capabilities and some other things, that's well worth the extra money in my opinion. But what do you guys think? Which phone do you prefer? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.